Greetings, loyal viewers, and welcome back to another review. You know what I've grown to love in recent years? Farming simulators. When they're done right. And so, with me having gotten into Harvest Moon Back to Nature a few years back, I feel this would be as good as time as any to take a look at the true spiritual successor to the Harvest Moon franchise, that being Stardew Valley. If I can describe my feelings towards this game even now, imagine kicking back in your own favorite chair with the most delicious meal that you love, multiply that by at least 5, and you have a game that is so good and relaxing that you will never want to eat or go anywhere else ever again. This is, in my honest opinion, a perfectly relaxing time after a hard day of work or a long day at school, both in which I definitely have not felt for a long time, but this is probably one of the best games to do that with. It's the kind of easy, enjoyable fun that anyone can pick up and play. It's not 100% perfect in my opinion, but it is something that can give you dozens upon dozens of hours of endless playtime with no end in sight. In fact, as I was writing this script at this very moment, I am about 80 plus hours into this game. And I've only gotten this I think about 2 weeks ago when it was 30% off for about $10. On a side note, in case you're interested in getting this game for yourself, which I would recommend by the way, the game itself is only $15 as of now. But what is it that makes this game so good and why I personally recommend it? Well, in my quick review, I'm going to go over the things that I loved the most, a few things that I thought could have been better, and give my final thoughts on the game as a whole. Also, I'm not going to be giving away too much of what goes on in this game, especially within the little things like the events and whatnot, as some parts of this game I do want others to fully experience for themselves. With all that out of the way, let us go ahead and get started. The game begins, naturally, with you creating and naming your own farmer as well as the name of your farm. Not to mention you get to not only pick between either a cat or dog, but have quite a few different options to pick the look within each one. Naturally, I went with a German Shepherd because they's the coolest dog ever and Dante's the coolest name ever, and I shall fight anyone who dares say otherwise. There's also a little option to where you can type in your character's favorite thing, which, without giving anything away, is a nice little detail that actually plays a bit into the game's progression later on that, again, I'm not going to give away for those who haven't played it, but it's kind of a cute little detail, I'm not going to lie. After that, we get a nice little intro cutscene with your grandfather on his deathbed as he gives you an important letter that he specifically tells you not to open both until you're much older and when you feel like you're ready. Cut to years later where we see your character is stuck at a soul-crushing dead-end office building along with... Woody? No, really. That's just friggin' Woody from the Toy Story franchise working at an office building. I don't know why, but the idea of that honestly cracks me up a lot. And yes, by the way, there are quite a few pop cultural references like that sprinkled throughout the game. After your character finally reads the letter, he or she quits her shitty day job and finally moves to his or her grandfather's old farm in, of course, the titular Stardew Valley. More specifically, just on the outskirts of what is known as Pelican Town. From here, it plays out about how you'd expect from a spiritual successor to Harvest Moon. Meet the mayor, who introduces you to your farm, which is beaten down and overgrown with plant life, along with Robin, the carpenter and mother of my personal waifu. And for the next in-game day or two, spending clearing that stuff out as much as possible so that you can start your first set of crops. It's at this very moment that I can go ahead and talk about at least a few things that I love the most about this game right off the bat. Firstly, the art style. Clearly being reminiscent of the SNES era of games, specifically the very first Harvest Moon game on Super Nintendo. Along with nice and nostalgic looking art style and graphics, there are some details in this game I absolutely love. Most notably, the lighting. My god, the lighting in this game is top notch. Especially at night with how light sources like torches, lamps, and braziers reflect on the environment as well as the characters. It's just so incredibly appealing to look at. The second, of course, naturally being the gameplay. It's about as simple as it goes, but what makes it really work are not only the tons, and I do mean tons of things you can do in this game, but also how it's done in ways that make it stand out more from even the best of the Harvest Moon games in my honest opinion. Mining, for example, not only has you going down as far as you can, mining what you can find, but also has monsters for you to combat as well to help freshen things up a bit. Fishing now has it to when you get a bite, from a fish at least, you enter a minigame of filling up the bar on the right by making sure the fish is within the tackle bar on the left. Kind of a neat idea. The only minor problem I have with this minigame is how annoying it can be to catch certain fish. More specifically the darters, which even if you have temporary tackle upgrades for the iridium rod, which is the only rod in the entire game where you can implement tackle upgrades, can be so damn obnoxious to get half the time. I think the biggest reason I feel being the momentum the tackle bar having that is almost as heavy as the friggin' ice physics in Crash 2. Trying to stop at the right moment to catch these damn things with heavy momentum like this can be so unreliable, and it especially makes catching some of the hardest fish in the game all the more difficult. And not in the fun way either, at least not in my opinion. If there's one thing I definitely admire about this game, though, is how important yet satisfying it is to plan ahead of time so that you can get so much done within certain days. Whether it be from making sure you have your crops ready to harvest, or going into the mines, or, more importantly, building up relationships with the denizens of Pelican Town, especially if you want to eventually marry someone in Pelican Town, assuming you'd be interested in that. Though, speaking of which, this does lead us to my third big reason for why I love this game so much: Pelican Town. Everything from the simple yet different and unique characters to the dozens of other activities to do in or out of town. There's also annual festival events, all in which are different and unique from one another, and at the end of it all is the town's abandoned community center, which you restore by means of giving these weird little spirit creatures specific items within separate bundles. Like I might have said earlier, there are tons of things you can do in this game that result in one of the most down-to-earth, seamless experiences I've played in recent years. And that being said, I don't think the game is flawless either. I guess with that said, I guess I should go ahead and talk about some of the things that I think could have been done better in this game. I already talked about how annoying fishing can be in this game, but to really kick this off, I guess I should go ahead and say that as much as I love the denizens of Pelican Town, some I do think are better written than others. Now, while there are no characters that I outright hate in this game, two characters I do tend to like the least are Haley, for being a bit too much of a shallow, inconsiderate bint. Don't get me wrong, she does get better the closer you get to her, and she does start to realize her faults, which is nice, but that's quite the ways to go in my opinion, and to be perfectly honest, I don't know why I would bother with that when the other bachelorettes, especially Maru, are just better written in my personal opinion. Though the most forgettable character in my book is easily Elliot. How much so, you may ask? Well, as I was writing this script, I literally had to look up who he was just to even remember what his name was in order to put it in the script at this very moment. That bad. If there is one other thing I wish could have been done better in the game to make doing a lot of the stuff in the game more fun, is that I really wish there was a sprint option. Don't get me wrong, I get that the idea of the game is to plan things out ahead of time, and a lot of the time it does work fine, and it doesn't get in the way of the overall experience. Most of the time. I just kinda wish that you could be able to do even more things within a single day sometimes. Especially later on in the game when you have so much more crops and things to build like that of a coop and barn, to house a variety of animals to increase your overall income. It does start to get a bit cumbersome after a while, I'm not gonna lie. Best strategy to do a lot of the time while still building a decent income later on in the game is to only plant the cheaper crops that grow within only a few short days. Maybe take a day or two between the time when you plant them, and you could potentially get a lot of stuff done in that time. Trust me, especially once you start upgrading your skills, you'll still get a good amount of money that way and be able to do a bunch of other stuff in the game. Overall, despite a couple of minor hiccups here and there, I do think this is one of the best relaxing experiences I've ever had in a game recently. And considering, like I said in the beginning, I played a good amount of Back to Nature not that long ago, which is still considered by many to be one of the best in the series, that's really saying something. On top of all that, and I guess I really should go ahead and get this out of the way before I forget, and this is something some people may not know about, but I think makes the whole thing even more impressive. The whole game was done by one guy. To give a quick background, the game was made by one-man indie developer Eric Barone not too long after graduating from the University of Washington. At first starting off as just a small fan-made alternative to Harvest Moon, he made Stardew Valley in an effort to address the many common problems of the series even after Back to Nature. He had worked on the game for around 10 hours every day, sometimes even more than that, for over 4 years. Safe to say this is his big passion project, and one that he continues to work on for 4 years after its release. And that is why I, King Gargantuous, give this game 9 Junimos out of 10. They may seem very simple on the surface, but beyond a Junimo's simplistic nature lies a delightful appearance with enriching rewards at the end of it all. And that's this game in a nutshell. The setting feels so alive, the characters are memorable for the most part, and the game is as simple yet incredibly satisfying as a great spiritual successor to Harvest Moon can be. While I do stand by that the game isn't perfect, any minor hurdles this joyride may have doesn't detract at all from the overall experience in my book. All I can really say at this point is that if Harvest Moon was the one that planted the very first crop, Stardew Valley is the one that grew it into the bountiful fields. A bit hammy on the summation there at the end, but I think you all get the idea. So, with that said, I'm King Gargantuous, and take care.